Welcome everybody to our webinar on product management review as an essential step in your S&OP or SiOP process. The agenda for this webinar will give a short introduction of Solventure, who we are, what we do. Product management review is about 3 key aspects. So we'll introduce these, and most of the webinar will be on reviewing each of the topics individually. Then we will show how to organize a product management review meeting, so who should attend and what's the typical agenda. Niels will show how Arqiva supports that PMR meeting, and normally we should have ample time in this webinar for your questions, and hopefully we can also provide you with answers. So let's start with introducing Solventure. As it's explained here on the top left, we are experts in designing and implementing SiOP, Sales, Inventory and Operations Planning. And we do that based on 4 key competences that's shown in the outer circle here. So first of all, we believe that to do a successful SiOP implementation, you need to have good process knowledge. You need to know how to design a demand planning process, or how to design an inventory management process, how to do that in fast-moving consumer goods, how to do that in chemicals. So process knowledge is really key to set up a good SiOP process. A second key component for us is tooling. We are using the Arqiva tooling. As it's mentioned here, Arqiva has been around since '93. Was founded in the US, Wilmington, has offices in Antwerp and India. So together with Arqiva, we serve global customers with from a set of global offices. You can also see here on the bottom left that Arqiva has been listed as a challenger by Gartner. It has also been referenced by Supply Chain Insights. So it's certainly a system you should take a look at if you're looking for SiOP software. And we are, as it's here again on the top left, the European channel partner of Arqiva, and we're headquartered in Belgium, Ghent. Third component, analytics. We believe that strong analytics, and that could be statistical forecasting, that could be stochastic inventory optimization, that could be the use of linear programming to optimize your supply plan. Those analytics act as a turbocharger to the process and the tools. If you have a good process and if you have a good tool, then analytics easily get 30% more performance out of your existing implementation. But it's also a matter of precision. So in general, I've seen that people who are implementing SiOP software lack good analytics skills. And if you set up something like statistical forecasting in the wrong way, it will do strange things. People will simply turn it off, and instead of adding value, you're not getting anything out of it. So if you look for an integrator or an implementation partner, make sure that that partner also has good analytics skills. And something we have, it also means that we have some PhDs in the company. We also have a lot of engineers in the company. That's the type of people we deploy. And fourth component, last and certainly not least, people. Simple, you can have the best process, you can have the best tool, you can have the most clever algorithms, but if the planner is not trusting the system, he will not use it, and he will revert to his old Excel solution. So people management and change management is really key to what we do. It's also embedded in our project approach. It's also embedded in the type of people we send over. So our people really try to see where is the resistance, where the people really understood, and in that way we are sure we can guarantee sustainable and lasting solutions. That's really a main concern of us. The different blocks here summarize our vision on SiOP. Today will be about product management review, so we'll be short on that one. But let's start with customer product segmentation. To our experience, still overlooked by a lot of companies. We still see a lot of companies that have the same service level for all customers and also for all products, and that simply cannot be true. That cannot be the optimal solution. No two customers are equal. they don't have the same volume, they don't have the same profitability, they don't have the same willingness to innovate, and still we give the same service level to the different customers. The same for products. No two products are equal. Some products more reflect the past, and some products more reflect the future. So some are more strategic, some are less strategic. Some products are more easy for you to make, some products are more difficult for you to make. Yeah? And that really defines like how easy is it to score service. If it's easy to make, it will be much more easy to score service. So segmenting products and segmenting customers for us really is a key starting step for a good SiOP process. And I will link back into it when we review some of the next steps. So product management review, I will not discuss it here because we will discuss it in detail later. Demand planning, forecasting, it also mentions collaborative forecasting. So we see that a lot of companies still have a step to make to get the buy-in from the salespeople internally. Yeah. Still more companies have a big step to do to collaborate with their biggest customers. And this is certainly something where the customer product segmentation can help. If you know who are the A customers, like the 20% of the customers generating 80% of the volume or of the margin, yeah, well, these are the customers you want to do collaborative forecasting with. You will have B customers, which are, there's many more compared to the A customers, and probably they only have an equal contribution if you look at the profitability. So for the B customers, probably you want to collaborate internally with the salespeople. You will have a long tail of C customers. Well, that long tail of C customers, maybe you don't want to collaborate with the salespeople, but there you want to be able to trust statistical forecasting. So having a good customer product segmentation ties into the demand planning process. Inventory review. So what are my optimal inventory parameters? And then I'm talking about safety stocks, I'm talking about lot sizes. What's the optimal policy? So which things are really forecast driven, and for which part of the business would it be more optimal to just use a reorder point policy? Which items will we make to stock? Which items will we make to order? So the policy, the parameters, that's part of the inventory optimization, you could say, and also inventory monitoring. Because if you aim for 100, you're sure your resulting inventory will be different. You will have more or you will have less. If you want to keep your inventory under control, you need to do close monitoring and you need to act upon the delta. So inventory review, another crucial step in your SiOP process. Supply review or supply planning, you could say from the customer up to the supplier. So distribution planning, production planning, could also be collaborative planning with key suppliers, and also, let us say, from the details up to the aggregated level. So within Arqiva, we do have a scheduling solution, we do have a master planning solution, we also have a rough cut capacity planning solution, which is more working in monthly buckets and working 3 to 18 months out, and that's probably the focus of the traditional SiOP process. Then we come to the executive SiOP, where we see that a lot of companies struggle to get the CEO in the driving seat, and that's a pity, because what other process do you have which gives you, on the one hand, a reflection on the past, and at the same time a forecast for the coming 3 to 18 months, like what will we sell, what will be the loading in the plants, what will be my cash flow. All of this information is crucial for senior executives to make good decisions. Why do we struggle? Well, probably a lot of executive SiOP meetings are too reporting intensive. So we're just sharing 100 PowerPoint slides. That's probably not how you trigger people's interest. So we strongly believe that it should be a decision-making meeting on key decisions. And to support key decisions, you should have scenario capabilities. And scenario capabilities really means like the forecast is 100, but what if it's 110? Or what if it's only 90? If it's 110, where will we run into troubles? And how will we prioritize? Potentially, again, based on the segmentation. If it's only 90, what will we do? Will we keep on producing? How much inventory will we produce? What will be the resulting cash consumption? Or will we shut down plants? And which plants will go down first? Well, this type of scenarios and decision making really helps to get the buy-in from the executives and make sure that they are taking the lead and they are seeing the S&OP process really as their cockpit to steer the business. That's the overall goal. The inner circle here has a couple of, let's say, important enablers for the SiOP process. Important enablers which are very well covered in the Arqiva software. That's why we use it. That's why we're also very happy we are the distributor into Europe. Volume and value translations, for sure. Planning is a volume business. In the end, you need to order or produce pieces or tons or kilograms or liters. If you want to tie in executives, if you want to make decisions, you want to do it based on value. You want to do it based on margin. You want to see euros, dollars, or other currencies. Second key enabler here, aggregation, disaggregation. The devil is in the details. So in planning, in the end, you need to ship a specific SKU to a specific customer ship to location. So it's in the details. But again, if you want to run scenarios, if you want to tie in the management, you will need to be able to present figures on an aggregated level. And only when you see big deviations there, then you want to be able to drill down into the details. Well, aggregation, disaggregation is really key in driving this S&OP process forward. Third one, scenario management. As I already mentioned, uncertainty is increasing. That puts a lot of strain on the forecast. And yes, you should try to make the best possible forecast, but you also need to be able to run scenarios. And Arqiva really has scenario management as a kind of a native capability. You could kind of say that everything is always run within a scenario, so it's very easy to run multiple scenarios and then to compare scenarios. And that's a third key enabler you need to run an effective SiOP. And at the center here is our supply chain triangle, where we see that companies really struggle to balance service, cost, and cash. Salespeople in general are more service-oriented, so they pull the top side of the triangle. Operations people and purchasing people are more cost-oriented, so they will pull the cost side of the triangle. And since the financial crisis, finance is very cash concerned, so they will kind of push the cash side of the triangle. And we will not go into detail here, but we have some vision papers on our slide here which explain it in more detail. Service is really about driving the top line, but managing a company is not only about top line. If you combine the top line with the cost, you get something like EBIT. But running a company is also not only about EBIT, because if you have two companies that generate 100 million of EBIT, probably if you have two companies running 100 million of EBIT, and let's assume that the first requires 100 million of cash and the second requires only 50 million of cash, then you will most probably do the second investment twice. So it's not only about EBIT, it's about the EBIT you generate over the cash employed or over the capital employed, and that's exactly the definition of the return on capital employed. And so it's about the EBIT over the generated investments, it's about the bang for the buck, and as we will see later on, that principle of return on capital employed will also be instrumental when we detail the product management review. So that's the introduction of Solventure, what we do. This slide tells a comparable story. It goes in a bit more detail, and it also shows what is covered by our Arqiva module. So we see that we have in Arqiva a module for segmentation. We do have a module for the product management review, which we will discuss in detail today. We have one for demand. We have one for inventory. You see that we have a separate module for multi-echelon inventory. We have separate modules for the separate layers of planning. We have a couple of modules supporting executive SiOP. And we also have an SAP connector, which allows us to easily integrate with SAP. Some of our customers, you really see that we work cross-sector. We really try to bring the best from the different sectors to you as a customer. And next slide is showing that next to our SiOP business, we are running the Solventure Academy. So if you are looking for training, either in-company training or external trainings, please reach out to us via the website. We are also investing in the development of a leading indicator forecasting solution. So how can we improve the forecast by using external information, whether it would be weather information or macroeconomic indicators, or whether it would be events, or whether it would be promotions. So if you want to know more about this, visit the leading indicator website. We also have a separate series of webinars on that topic. But the goal of today was to discuss product management review. So why do we position it in the SiOP process, and what does it exactly mean? With that product management review, we try to tackle 3 critical questions. The first one, new product introductions. What we see is that 7 out of 10 new product introductions, or NPIs, are overstated. And the question is, how do we improve that? And what do we do with the 3 out of 10 that are understated? So that's the first question we will come back to. Second question, end of life. I typically say that companies are very good at introducing new products, but they are very bad they are very bad at taking old stuff out. And if you want to take an old product out, we typically bump into sales who says, well, you cannot take out that product because I said it to this or that customer, and so on and so on. So how do we tackle that? Third topic, validation of mid to long-term forecasts. Well, for the sales, we typically heavily collaborate, for the forecast, we typically heavily collaborate with the salespeople, but the salespeople typically have a short horizon, like they look at the current fiscal quarter, so they look at the next 3 months. And if I look at a longer period of time, I don't have an estimate of promotions, I don't have an estimate of any big tenders, I don't have a good estimate of how evolutions in the market will be. And the product management review, where we tie in the product managers or marketing, we believe that also the validation of the mid to long-term forecast, it's crucial that we discuss that with them. But let's start with that first question, improving the forecast of NPIs. So what was the problem? 7 out of 10 NPIs overstated. That means that most probably I'm carrying too much product in the early stage of the life cycle. So it's not a wise investment to simply have too much inventory of new products. If my forecast is too low, then I have a service risk. And I don't want to be out of stock of a product which is new in the market. And improving that situation, we could say that stock balance between new products, that's really what we try to improve. How do we do it? Well, if you want to improve it, you need to have a stage gate process. And the stage gates process defines like, okay, innovation goes in multiple steps. At each of the steps, we try to refine the previous step, and we also install gates. It means that at each gate, we kill ideas. Not every idea for a new product will in the end be launched. We see that we have different stages, and scoping is kind of building a rough business case, like what could be the potential market, what's the potential size, what would be a typical product structure, what would be a typical cost. So it's really a high-level business case, and we will have more scoping than we actually build refined business cases. So stage 2 will be building the refined business case. Only if we have a solid business case, we will start the development. And not all the products for which we built the business case should start really development. If we have developed a product, we will go to testing and validating. And only if we have tested and validated, we are ready to launch the product. This stage and gate process has been described by Robert Cooper. It's a typical process to, let's say, manage your innovation process. And if you want to improve the forecast for NPIs, this is where we tie into. We try to tie into specific stages. So we try to tie into the business case stage. What's the risk there? Well, if the volumes are overstated, then typically the costs will be understated. What we see a lot is that if we are too enthusiastic here, we will get unrealistic targets into the operation. So what we think is crucial here is certainly at this stage, at the business case stage, that the volumes and the forecast is being challenged in the product management review meeting. And that product management review meeting will be marketing people, but it will also be supply chain people, it will be purchasing people. And by challenging the forecast, we will probably come to a more realistic estimate. Another one which is certainly crucial is the launch stage. And when we come to the launch stage, procurement or purchasing will start negotiating with suppliers. Well, if the volume is too high, most probably your MOQs will be too high. Purchasing will be tempted to believe the high forecast. Why? Because if they can promise a high volume, they will probably get a lower cost. So again, you have a big risk here that the expectations are inflated, that your MOQs will be inflated, and if your MOQ is inflated and sales really drops down when you launch the product, you can easily get stuck with 3 to 6 months or even a year of components or ingredients or of product. So you need to be very careful here. So you need to make sure from a supply chain perspective that also at this stage you are able to really challenge that forecast. And a last one is that once the product is really launched, you need to make sure that you have a close monitoring and follow-up. And yes, certainly if it's a new product in a new market, making a forecast is very difficult. So you know that the forecast will be wrong. You need to challenge it in the business case phase. You need to challenge it at the launch phase. But also once the product is launched, you need to keep the pulse, and at least every month you need to, at least for 3 or 6 months after the initial launch, have a close review of the NPIs with the product manager or with marketing, like how is the product running, how is it going, is it going faster than expected, is it going slower than expected, what is the explanation, and what do we expect to happen, like will we still sell the same volume within the current year, but is it being delayed and will we then all of a sudden see a surge, or is the adoption in the market slower than we initially expected, so will the volume for this year simply be lower and will the volume be more spread into next year as well. So these are crucial questions which you need to ask. You need to ask it to make sure that products which are overstated, that these are corrected downwards, but you might also have products which are understated. So you need to make sure that those products are updated upwards. That was really on the NPI, the new product introduction. Second topic to follow up is how do I manage my product portfolio and how do I manage my end of life? That has to do with the question, we're good at introducing new stuff, but we're very bad at taking old products out. And how do we do it? Well, before I give the answer, I see in a lot of companies that cutting SKUs or stopping products is a difficult thing to do. Because if you cut an SKU, then sales will push back and say, hey, you cannot stop this product because I'm selling it to this or that customer. And your answer should be like, well, yes, if we cut a product, it should impact sales. Because if I cut a product and it's not impacting sales, then I'm really too late. Then it's an obsolete product, and instead of waiting until stuff is obsolete, we want to do it earlier. We want to cut earlier. So it's not just about the sales. And salespeople might also give pushback and say, yeah, but I know that this product is not really profitable, but that product is part of this portfolio, and I'm selling this portfolio to that type of customer. So you cannot take this product out because I realize the margin on a bigger portfolio. That's the second question to come to. And so how do we solve it? Well, we say let's think about what happens when a product is coming near the end of life. When a product is coming near the end of life, first of all, the sales will start dropping. Sales is declining. If a product is near its end of life, we will also see price competition. So not only the sales is dropping, also the margin per unit is dropping. That means that if my turnover goes down, because I also have price erosion, my EBIT will go down even faster. And as the product is becoming more slow moving, we need to look at the inventory. If it's becoming more slow moving, the inventory is going up. So it means my EBIT is going down fast and I need to invest more inventory. And so if I think back of that return on capital employed, it's really negatively impacted. My EBIT is going down and I need to invest more money. It's less return on capital employed, or it's less bang for the buck. So we believe that if you monitor the average return on capital employed, and the substitute here could be like what's the generated margin per invested euro or dollar in inventory. So what's the EBIT or margin per invested inventory dollar or inventory euro. If you see how that evolves, you are able to point out issues and problems and say to salespeople like, okay, this product is going down rapidly, when do we want to take it out? And if the average generated margin per inventory dollar is to say something, if it would be 20%, if products are dropping below 15% or below 10% or below 5%, when do we take stuff out? And it also gives you a solution to, you cannot cut this individual SKU because it belongs to a certain portfolio. Well, if you look at the EBIT per inventory dollar, you can do that per SKU. You can also do that for a product group. If you then compare product groups, you will also see that for some product groups, you generate more margin for less inventory dollars. And some other product groups, you will generate less margin for more inventory dollars. So even without fixing a hard threshold, comparing customers or products or product groups using this type of metric really triggers a discussion with the product management people, and sooner or later it will force them to take stuff out. It might be a good idea to say, certainly when they want to launch a new product group, to do this type of analysis with them and say, okay, you're going to introduce 100 new SKUs. What's the targeted return on capital employed? Or what's the targeted margin per inventory dollar? And what are you going to take out? Because if you aim for 20% and you still have stuff sitting around for 5%, we want to take some stuff out. This really helps you to control the complexity in your supply chain and in your supply chain planning. It also helps you to take out inventory before it really becomes obsolete. We see it's a big struggle in a lot of companies, and by building this type of reports into Archiva, and Niels will show it later on, we have seen it really helps companies to keep better to better keep control of their complexity of their product portfolios. Okay, so how to stop? Well, once you have decided to stop, ensure that you have a process in place to start the phasing out. Communicate the last time buy to your customers. Stop supply, sell out the inventory, and if needed and appropriate, centralize the remaining stock if you would have decentral stocking points. Another question when it comes to phasing out stuff, well, you can cut an SKU, you can cut a product group, but you could also cut out really a product group on the intermediate level. So that's cutting leaves, branches, or trees. The more you cut, the bigger the impact. It might really change your cost structure. So the bigger the cut you take, the more strategic the decision becomes. But certainly trigger that type of discussions in that product management review meeting. Third topic for that PMR meeting, validation of the mid to long-term forecast. So as I already introduced, we see that in general, forecasting is done with the salespeople, with the sales community. But we also see that the sales community has a relatively shorter time focus. Like they are happy if they can already predict what they are going to sell for the next 3 months. If you are in FMCG, planning promotions probably is not done on a much longer horizon than 3 months. So what comes after the 3 months, you don't have any details yet. If you would more be in business to business, well, if you look at tenders, if you look at big projects, also that material is typically only firm, or you have a good idea in the first 3 months. You don't have a good idea of that after the first 3 months. So So it means that you have a good idea really in the operational horizon, but you are missing that type of information more in the tactical horizon. And that also means that if you don't do anything, you will see that you have a good forecast for the next 3 months, and then the volume kind of gradually declines. That if the first 3 months is 100, your forecast drops back with 5, 10, 15, up to 20, 25%, because you are lacking good promo information, you are lacking good project information. And what we there see is that when you are really looking at mid to long-term trends, the marketing people and the product management people, those are the people who have that type of horizon in mind. So tying those people in and having them validate that mid to long-term forecast, that's crucial in getting to a good forecast to feed the SiOP process. So that's a third aspect which we believe is crucial, or why it's crucial that you tie in product management and marketing into the SiOP process. And those are the 3 key questions to validate with them: NPIs, end of lives, and then the mid to long-term forecast. So how do you organize that as a meeting? So this is again the summary. So customer product segmentation is probably something you do. You do the initial exercise and then you update it at least once a year, typically tied to the budgeting process. You can do a monthly reporting like, okay, are customers getting up or getting down the segmentation? But typically you change it only once a year linked to the budgeting process, the classification. The product management review is a monthly meeting where you try to tie in the product management or R&D or marketing, depending on how you are organized. And then the demand review is the monthly meeting where you really tie in the sales people, so the sales force, to validate the shorter term forecast. Who should participate? Well, we believe that the S&OP manager should really chair that product management review meeting, because he's kind of the neutral person to make sure that it's a fact-based meeting, that people are challenged whether we are doing the right thing, let's say trying to maximize the bang for the buck, or the EBIT over the invested inventory dollar. Product management or R&D or marketing, depending on how you are organized and the type of roles you have in the company. Supply chain should be there. Supply chain is a good challenger. He's good with numbers, so he will also have to make sure that if we typically overestimate NPIs, that the facts are there on the table, and putting the facts on the table will help us to come to a better forecast. Procurement should typically be there. Why? Certainly for the NPIs. We are making contracts with suppliers. If the contracts are based on wrong numbers, it can be very hard and difficult to correct it afterwards. So you need to make sure that the procurement people are around the table. And finance should also be around the table for the NPIs when it comes to the business case, but certainly also for the end of life. Like if we would have to write off stuff, it's important that finance is immediately tied in so that they are aware of what's on the table and that they can help make tough decisions on that side. So these are the people that should participate. So you see that sales is not in here. In our mind, product portfolio management in most companies is not a responsibility of sales. That's more residing with the product management, R&D, marketing. So that's this type of meeting. The forecasting meeting or the demand planning meeting, that's where we really focus on stuff that is running. And once it's running, salespeople will be the best people to estimate what we are going to sell, at least on the shorter horizon. Typical agenda, 4 points, which are the 4 topics which we covered. So NPI and follow-up. So what we really recommend is to link it to your stage gate process and say, okay, which are the NPIs which are in the business case stage? What are the assumptions there? And let's try to challenge that. Also, when we come to the launch decision, if we are deciding which suppliers to use, if we are deciding on MOQs, that's where you need to be awake, because that's where important decisions are being made. So that's also where you should be able to challenge as a supply chain or S&OP manager. So validate then the forecast at the key stage gates and also for the first 3 to 6 months after the launch. So how long should we take? Depends on the industry. The key question is here, from what time onwards is it better to trust the salespeople, because they know how the product is running based on the feedback of their customers. But as long as the salespeople are not the best ones to make the estimate, then keep the forecast validation with the marketing and the product management. NPI and the follow-up of that, changes to product ranges. So if you have any important changes, the product management review meeting is again a meeting to discuss. Product portfolio end of life follow-up. So do the critical analysis at least once every quarter. You can also do it on a monthly basis, like which products seem to be dropping down, where is the EBIT decreasing. You could even ask yourself, like, can I improve the EBIT, for instance, by doing a cost down, by re-engineering the product? That's possible. It will be triggered also by this product portfolio analysis. And which is the stuff that we really proactively take out. Don't wait until there's no sales, because then you have a lot of sunk costs. So you try to be more proactive by using that EBIT per inventory dollar metric that Niels will also show later on. Fourth topic, validation of the mid-range forecast. So typically what we are missing in the mid-range is like what's the expected promo volume, what's the expected project volume, what's the expected tender volume. So any sales-driven activity which the salespeople don't have in the 3 to 18 month time horizon, you want to make sure that the marketing or the product management gets you the best possible information there. So it means we have come to the moment that you can ask questions. So not sure if you have any questions. We will look at our screen here. How can you submit the question? Well, normally you should have this type of audio box. And if you click open questions here you can enter a question for the staff. And if you enter a question for us here, we see it popping up here, and we should be able hopefully to pick it up and to potentially give you an answer. Yep, certainly have a first question here, like for the end of life, does it consider margin differences between customers, or is it only looking at products? Well, not sure how to best answer this. If you cut a product, in the end, you look at the margin of the product. But we can, you can easily drill down and see, okay, well, what's the underlying customer profitability? And just imagine that you would say the average profitability of the product is not good, but it really is because there is a customer which is has a negative margin and another customer which has a very positive margin. You can drill down, and based on drilling down, you might even do the analysis on a customer level, because if you just have a very negative margin customer, instead of cutting the product, you might decide to cut the customer. Then it more in the end becomes a kind of a customer analysis. So the end of life tool does not prescribe that you need to do it in a product way, if that's clear and an answer to the question. Yeah, see, a question here, is the presented software only available as an end-to-end package? The answer is no. So Archiva is modular, so if you want to know more about specifically this module, we're happy to come back to it. And it does integrate indeed with SAP. That's also the second question. We have that SAP connector, so it's quite easy to pull data out of SAP, give you this type of reports, and make sure that you can trigger action. Yeah, good question. Question is, you talk about the EBIT. but how do you measure the EBIT per product? Because it's difficult to measure EBIT per product, that's true. So which type of margin do you use? A very good question, and typically also part of a good deal of discussion within the company. We typically try to use a type of margin which is commonly used in the company. And you have a margin which is only looking at the variable cost, or you have a margin which is including the fixed costs. So typically companies have different type of margins, and we typically also have a discussion on which data do we trust, because every margin is typically also subject to debate. And I know this is a vague answer, but to be correct, we don't use EBIT, because indeed EBIT on a product level is not easy. So we typically do use a type of margin, and we look for with the company for the type of margin which we trust the most, and let us say where we can avoid a discussion on the data and avoid a discussion on the margin, and really have a discussion on which products to cut. Another good question, lots of good questions. Why is the focus mainly put on inventory from the operational point of view and not on other factors such as, for instance, production complexity and line capacities? Well, that question triggers two thoughts with me. Is one, that if a product is more complex, ideally that complexity has been accounted for in the product cost. So it means that the production complexity typically should be reflected in the product cost, and as such should be reflected in the margins, so it should be reflected in there. Yeah? Production capacity is a more difficult one, because you say, well, if I'm simply cutting volume but I stay with the same fixed cost, then probably it's not fully fair, because I take away volume and it will simply increase the cost of the remaining product, and it will reduce the margin of the remaining product. So how do you account for capacity? That's a more difficult one. But even if you don't cut the product, visualizing the product in the way we did will trigger a different type of discussion with the product management people. And what for sure you can do is that if we are adding new products, you will be adding new volume, and instead of just adding stuff, that might be a good moment to take stuff out, because in that way you can keep the capacity loading kind of fixed and leveled without then let's say also unnecessarily increasing the complexity by increasing extra products. Question is, what kind of standard simulations are available in the software? Is it easy to do ad hoc simulations? Not sure what you mean with simulations, but in any case, what you can easily do is, we've not shown that here, but the software comes with very easy selection mechanisms. Not sure if you would be thinking about cost downs or something like that, but let's say changing the cost of a product or a product category and seeing what would be the impact is something we can quite easily configure. So depending really on what you're looking at, setting that up is quite easy. And once it's set up, using it is quite straightforward. So changing the level of aggregation, comparing different type of data, and reporting, or making a report, and also graphically representing, like Niels showed, based on different type of data and compiling different type of reports. All of that is certainly quite straightforward, and we have experienced that being able to compile that type of information in a straightforward way has triggered a significant improvement in the case we have shown earlier. Another question here is there kind of a minimum or a maximum number of SKUs you should have to benefit from the product management review? Good question. The more stable the business is, so the less dependent you are on changes in the product portfolio. Yeah, let us say the shorter will be the list, but vice versa. I think we see that for most of our customers and also the other companies we talk to, the changes in general product life cycles are becoming shorter. So it also means that the percent of your product portfolio that is changing year on year is becoming more important. That also makes that this product management review is getting crucial, because if you don't install it and you continuously introduce new stuff and you don't take old stuff out, I've seen last year I've been involved in a case where the company was running the same turnover, but they were doing it with 50% more products, and their inventory turns went down from around 5 to around 2.5. So their inventory turns nearly halved, because simply they were carrying 50 more products for the same turnover. So the shorter product life cycles become, and the more changes you do have in the product portfolio, which is a general trend, the more crucial this process becomes to manage inventory and also to manage efficiency in the plan. Because if you're running a factory and over 5 years period you need to run 50% more products for the same volume, it's really a nightmare to keep that efficiently organized. Okay. If you would still have questions, don't hesitate. We'll leave it open for 1 or 2 minutes, but time is around up. So let me thank you for participating in the webinar. The recording will be made available. Also, the slide set will be made available. We had a webinar last month on customer product segmentation, which is tackling, let us say, comparable question, but really more from a strategic perspective. So what are the ABC customers? What are the ABC products? This is more, once you have done that exercise, how do I keep control in a monthly process? That's more what this PMR is about. We have a webinar planned next month on how to improve demand planning. So thank you for participating, and hopefully we can meet again there. And in the meantime, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are most happy to help you. So thank you, and have a nice continuation of the day.